This week has been packed with major developments across the Linux ecosystem, and if you've been following open source technology, you'll know that the pace of innovation is showing no signs of slowing down. From Linux gaining what could be its biggest opportunity in years, to the announcement of a brand new Linux-powered tablet, and Google's ongoing legal battle resulting in another multi-billion euro fine from the European Union, there's a lot to unpack. These stories aren't just isolated headlines, they're connected by a much larger trend. Open source software is becoming more important than ever, and Linux continues to find itself at the center of technological change. Let's begin with what many people are calling Linux's biggest opportunity yet. Over the last decade, Linux has steadily expanded beyond servers and developers' laptops into cloud computing, supercomputers, embedded devices, IoT hardware, gaming, artificial intelligence, and enterprise infrastructure. But now, several industry shifts are creating an environment where Linux could reach an even broader audience than ever before. One of the biggest reasons is the increasing demand for user control and transparency. More people are becoming concerned about privacy, forced online accounts, telemetry collection, subscription-based software, and restrictive ecosystems. As operating systems become more tightly integrated with cloud services and AI features, many users are starting to look for alternatives that give them greater ownership over their devices. Linux has always offered exactly that. Users can choose their desktop environment, install software from trusted repositories, customize every aspect of their system, and avoid many of the restrictions found on proprietary operating systems. What once appealed mainly to enthusiasts is now becoming attractive to everyday users who simply want a computer that works on their terms. Another major factor is aging hardware. Millions of perfectly functional computers are being replaced because they no longer meet the requirements of newer operating systems. Rather than sending these machines to landfills, users are discovering lightweight Linux distributions that breathe new life into older hardware. Distributions like Linux Mint, MX Linux, Zorin OS Lite, Lubuntu, and Dimmu to demonstrate that efficient software doesn't require cutting-edge hardware. At the same time, governments and public institutions around the world are showing renewed interest in open-source solutions. Rising software licensing costs, cybersecurity concerns, and the desire for technological independence are encouraging many organizations to evaluate Linux as a long-term alternative. While large-scale migrations are never simple, the conversation around digital sovereignty has become much more serious than it was just a few years ago. Artificial intelligence is also unexpectedly helping Linux. Nearly every major AI framework is developed and optimized primarily on Linux systems. Researchers, developers, startups, and enterprise companies overwhelmingly rely on Linux servers for AI workloads. As AI continues transforming industries, Linux remains the preferred operating system behind much of that innovation. Gaming has also evolved dramatically. Thanks to Valve's Proton compatibility layer, Steam Deck, and continuous improvements from the open-source graphics community, thousands of Windows games now run remarkably well on Linux. What was once considered Linux's greatest weakness has become one of its fastest-growing strengths. Speaking of the Steam Deck, its success has proven something very important. Consumers are perfectly willing to buy Linux-powered hardware when the experience is polished. Many users didn't even realize they were using Linux until after purchasing Valve's handheld gaming PC. That success has inspired other hardware manufacturers to consider Linux-first products. That brings us to another exciting story this week, a brand new Linux tablet entering the market. Linux tablets have always faced unique challenges. Traditional desktop interfaces don't translate perfectly to touchscreens, while mobile operating systems often sacrifice flexibility for simplicity. Building a tablet that delivers the openness of Linux while maintaining a smooth touch experience is no easy task. The newly announced Linux tablet aims to bridge that gap. While specifications vary depending on configuration, the device is designed around a modern ARM processor, offering excellent battery life and efficient performance. It ships with a Linux-based operating system specifically optimized for touch interaction while still providing access to desktop-class applications when needed. Unlike conventional tablets that lock users into closed ecosystems, this Linux tablet embraces openness. Users can install software through package managers, access terminal tools, connect external peripherals, and customize the operating system just like on a traditional Linux desktop. Developers can write software directly on the device without requiring another computer. The tablet also supports keyboard attachments, turning it into a compact productivity machine. For students, developers, writers, and Linux enthusiasts, this could become an attractive alternative to traditional tablets that often restrict file management and software installation. Open-source hardware projects have historically struggled because of limited software optimization and smaller developer communities. However, today's Linux ecosystem is significantly more mature than it was 5 or 10 years ago. Desktop environments like KDE Plasma and GNOME continue improving touchscreen support, while Wayland delivers smoother graphics and better input handling across modern devices. This doesn't necessarily mean Linux tablets will suddenly dominate the market, but they represent an important step toward expanding Linux into new form factors. Diversity in hardware benefits the entire ecosystem because it encourages software developers to improve compatibility, optimize applications, and create more flexible user experiences. Now let's move on to one of the week's biggest legal headlines. Google has once again found itself facing massive regulatory action in Europe. The European Union's long-running antitrust case resulted in another confirmation of a fine totaling approximately €4 billion, one of the largest competition penalties ever imposed on a technology company. The case centers around Google's Android business practices. European regulators argued that Google used its dominant market position to unfairly strengthen its search engine and browser by requiring manufacturers to pre-install Google Search and Chrome alongside the Google Play Store on Android devices. According to regulators, these agreements reduced competition by making it much harder for alternative search engines, browsers, and software developers to gain visibility on mobile devices. Google has consistently defended its approach, arguing that Android itself is open source, and that manufacturers voluntarily choose Google services because they provide value to customers. The company also points out that Android has enabled enormous innovation by allowing hardware manufacturers to build smartphones at every price point. However, European courts have largely sided with regulators, concluding that Google's market practices limited competition in ways that violated EU antitrust rules. While the exact financial penalty has changed throughout the appeals process, the fine remains one of the most significant ever issued against a technology company. For Linux users, this story has broader implications than it may initially appear. Android itself is built on the Linux kernel, making it the world's most widely deployed Linux-based operating system. Yet many people don't associate Android with Linux because Google's software ecosystem sits on top of the open-source foundation. The legal case highlights an interesting distinction between open-source software and commercial ecosystems. While Android's core remains open source, many of the services people use every day, including Google Play services, Gmail, Maps, and other applications, are proprietary additions that create a very different user experience from traditional Linux distributions. This has encouraged renewed interest in alternative Android-based operating systems like GrapheneOS, LineageOS, LeOS, and CalyxOS. These projects attempt to give users greater privacy, more control, and reduced dependence on Google's proprietary services while still benefiting from Android's Linux foundation. Meanwhile, Linux itself continues making steady progress across desktops, servers, embedded systems, cloud platforms, and mobile devices. Rather than chasing a single breakthrough moment, the community continues improving thousands of small details that collectively make Linux stronger every year. Kernel developers are constantly enhancing hardware support, file systems, security features, scheduling, and power efficiency. Desktop developers continue refining user interfaces, accessibility, and application compatibility. Distribution maintainers work tirelessly to package software, fix bugs, and provide stable releases for millions of users worldwide. Perhaps the most impressive aspect of Linux is its collaborative development model. Thousands of contributors from different countries, companies, universities, and independent communities work together to build software that anyone can inspect, modify, and improve. That level of cooperation remains one of Linux's greatest strengths and one of the reasons it continues thriving after more than 3 decades. Taken together, this week's stories paint a fascinating picture of where Linux stands today. The growing demand for user freedom, the arrival of innovative Linux hardware like dedicated tablets, and the ongoing regulatory scrutiny surrounding dominant technology platforms all point toward a future where openness, transparency, and user choice become increasingly valuable. Linux isn't just surviving, it continues expanding into new markets while strengthening its position in existing ones. Whether it's powering AI clusters, cloud infrastructure, gaming handhelds, privacy-focused smartphones, lightweight desktops, or emerging tablet devices, Linux remains one of the most influential technologies in the modern computing world. If these trends continue, the coming years could represent one of the biggest periods of growth the Linux ecosystem has ever experienced, making this an exciting time for developers, enthusiasts, businesses, and everyday users alike.